John McElligott has always had a passion for improving the quality of life of others. He grew up in a missionary family. Today he is a different kind of evangelist, a technical futurist. He is a sought-after national speaker on technology, robotics, artificial intelligence, and disruption. He says the world is no longer changing, it is being disrupted. He warns audiences to not ignore disruption, but embrace it. John predicts emerging technology will soon be changing the face of industry by the month, not by the year. A former Marine specializing in demolitions, he now foresees an explosive future of a different kind. Once you have heard him speak, you'll understand what all the buzz is about. Those who have seen him speak highly recommend him. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John McElligott.
Awesome, good morning. And can everyone hear me okay? All right, great, good morning. And thank you for that awesome introduction. Over the last 24 months, there have been some incredible advancements in the fields of robotics, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things. Now, these are going to create incredible opportunities, but they're also going to create incredible challenges. But if we're willing to face these challenges head on and embrace the coming disruption, the opportunities are going to be endless. So I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff today. I'm going to talk about robotics, artificial intelligence. I'm even going to pull someone out of the audience to come up and program my little robot up here. But these advancements are going to create incredible challenges. And I'm not going to lie to you. Probably by the end of this presentation, you're going to be a little scared. You're going to be a lot scared. But it's important. So before I go a little bit deeper, I'll introduce myself a little more. So I am the CEO of York Exponential. We are a collaborative robotics company, which is this little guy up here. This is the first generation of this technology, humans and robots working together. So these robots are designed not to replace people, but to work with them. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But we also believe that this next jump in technology will look less like Facebook in 2013 and more like Ford Motors in 1913. The same way it was the automobile created the middle class. It went from the horse to the automobile to increasing human capability. We believe it will go from humans and robots to increasing human capability. So we knew that we needed a workforce. So that is why we started the Fortress of York. So we took control of the Western National Bank in my hometown of York, Pennsylvania, and we became our region's first licensed higher education institution all around accelerated education in robotics and artificial intelligence. Our goal is to create the first generation of robot mechanics. We believe that the same way the automobile created the middle class, that robots, just like this guy, can create the middle class as well. But we knew that it wouldn't be enough. And I'll talk a little bit more about the York plan later. So we took control of the center of our city, and we're building a 240,000 square foot innovation district, all around humans and robots working together. Augment America has become our slogan. Not replace, not automate, but augment. Now, I've had a chance to give this presentation all over the place. I've spoken after 5 different governors. I was a keynote for the White House a couple times, and thousands of community leaders. But this is going to be a little bit of a matrix moment. When I told you guys, I'm going to scare you, I'm really going to scare you, right? But this is going to be that, do you take the blue or the red pill? Because some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is going to be a challenge. And you're going to have to make that decision. Are you going to take the information and do something with it and drastically change your mindset? Or are you going to put your head in the sand, walk out of here, and continue going in the direction you're going? Now, whenever I gave this presentation, I used to like to start with this quote. The world's largest taxi firm, Uber, owns no cars. The world's most popular media company, Facebook, creates no content. The world's most valuable retailer, Alibaba, carries no stock. And the world's largest accommodation provider, Airbnb, owns no property. We are at the end of this age of disruption. These last 15 years, everybody's been chasing is the past. It is not the future. As the physical and digital worlds collide, we need to rethink everything. Right now, Uber has self-driving cars. I was in them in Pittsburgh, in my home state. Things are changing, and they're changing fast. And that's where the opportunity comes. Now, things have been speeding up, and they're not going to slow down. And I'm going to talk about AI. I'm going to talk about robotics. But as far as I'm concerned, if you really want to know why everything's been speeding up and it's never going to slow down again, it's this. Who knows what this is? Shout it out. Napster. All right. So if you really want to know why things are speeding up and they're never going to slow down, we're going to get in a time machine. I'm going to take you back to the spring of 1999. Now, to put it in its context, at this time, the terrible band Smash Mouth was topping the charts. The only rule about Fight Club was you don't talk about Fight Club, and I was a sophomore in college. Now, when I was in college, I had 2 jobs, and one would be one of the greatest jobs I'd ever have, and one would be one of the worst jobs I ever had. And they're actually both in the same mall. So the first job I had is I worked at what was called the Great Steak and Potato. I don't know if anybody here knows what a great steak and potato is. Yeah, great. It's pretty self-explanatory. And as a college kid, I thought, man, I get to eat as much free steak and potato. I am a McElligott, so I love steak and potatoes. And I thought it was going to be great. Has anyone here worked fast food before? Right, it's not great. Right? You have to clean the grill, work the grill. I mean, it was this little booth in the food court, and I was all on my own. And there's only so many times you can be chased home by dogs because you smell like meat before you're like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. But I stuck it out. And I stuck it out for one reason. Because at 1:30, after the lunch rush, I got to go to what would be one of the greatest jobs I'd ever have. See, I worked in a record town. And it was one of the last record stores before they all started closing down. And it was everything you could possibly imagine when you think about working in a record store. I got to bring my guitar to work. I got to goof off with my friends all day. But one of the greatest things was I got to be the hero in my dorm 1 time a month. See, at the time, there were only a couple different ways that you would discover new music. One was on the radio. The other was like on MTV. And the last was from me. See, on that first Monday of every month, we got what were called CD samplers. So the record labels would all send us all the new music. And we were supposed to put them in the CD towers, like if you remember those big CD towers, and everyone would crowd around, and that's how they would listen to new music. What my bosses didn't know was me and all the people I worked with would bring in a shoebox of blank CDs, and we would copy all the new music before it was released. So that first Monday of every month, we would go back to the dorm, and we'd be heroes, because we would be new music guys. And I remember this vividly. It was a Monday night, and I was walking in with my shoebox, and I heard the new Third Eye Blind single blaring from my friend Fred Duff's room. And I pounded on the door, and I demanded to know where he got it. And he told me, I got it from Napster. I said, what's a Napster? He said, well, it's this website, and you can get free music. And then you can start sharing it, and pretty soon everybody's sharing it, and now there's free music everywhere. And I thought, so you're stealing it? Because I knew something about stealing music. I'd become an expert at that point. And he said, no, we're sharing it. And I thought, well, I like new music. And I grew up watching Sesame Street. Like, sharing is good. And so we did it more and more and more. Now, this was probably about, it's got to be coming up to 18, 19 years ago. Some of you might remember when the drummer of Metallica, Lars Ulrich, went before Congress. And this is what he had to say about Napster. He said, Napster and file-sharing services like Napster will be the death knell of the music industry. It devalues art. It takes money out of hard-working artists' pocket, and it will be the end of everything. And this is what me and my friend said, watching this on TV in response. Shut up, you rich, whiny rock star baby. You gotta be kidding me. I mean, Metallica at the time was charging like $100 for tickets. All we wanted to do was listen to music, and this super rich rock star was basically lecturing us on the morality of the internet. And so we did it more and more and more. I mean, we filled up what seemed like unlimited numbers of hard drives. Now keep this in your head, right? Because I'm going to plant this seed. And then we're going to come back to it later. Because as I talk about artificial intelligence, I talk about robotics, the seed of all of this disruption and why it's speeding up and never going to slow down, as far as I'm concerned, goes directly back to that. But we can't get to the present and the future without understanding how we got to where we are. So, according to Reader's Digest in 1966, by 1999, we'd all be flying around in jetpacks, living underwater. This was supposed to be the world of the future. Or another way to look at it is the world of Back to the Future. Right? You guys remember this? I think it was like 2 years ago. It was Marty McFly Day, where it was the day he went into the future. We're supposed to have flying cars and hoverboards and holograms. I mean, the reality is, thanks to technology like the HoloLens and Magic Leap, if you guys get a chance, check out Magic Leap, our holographic technology is way better than this as far as augmented reality and virtual reality. And we actually do have flying cars. They're testing this in Dubai right now. These are autonomous drones that they're beginning to launch right now. And we do have hoverboards. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, they don't really hover. They just kind of explode and set your pants on fire. But the future's here. And if you don't believe me, here is a video of Mike Tyson riding a hoverboard. He said, "I broke my back." Apparently, we're not getting volume on this. But there's something to really understand around this, right? Because the media has tricked us into not understanding that the technology's here. See, we thought for a very, very long time in a linear fashion, and it's actually served us incredibly well. Linear thought is if you see something happening, you can anticipate within a year something else will happen, within 10 years something else, and then 20. So in the 50s, when we started seeing computers and robots, our thought was, well, we're all going to have robot butlers in 10 years. And then when it didn't happen, everything got put in the science fiction category. But the truth was, the technology was growing, but it wasn't growing in a linear way. It was growing exponentially. And exponential thought is very different. So if you were trying to hunt your lunch tens of thousands of years ago, you could pull your bow back, track the deer, and take it down. You would never expect the deer to speed up and fly off into space, right? But that's exponential growth. And a good way to talk about it is, and I like to borrow this story from Ray Kurzweil, who's one of the heads of deep learning at Google. He likes to tell the story of the invention of chess. So thousands of years ago, there was an emperor. And this emperor loved to play games. But he'd mastered every game that there was. So he sent out a decree in the whole kingdom and said, whoever can bring me a game that I can't beat right away will have anything their heart desires. And so people came from all over the kingdom. And they came with games of chance, dice, cards, you name it. And the king was able to beat everyone immediately. Until one day, there was an inventor. And he'd fashioned a chessboard. And he sat down with the emperor, and they began to play. And game after game after game, the emperor was beaten by the inventor. But instead of being angry, he was delighted. Because this was everything that he'd been looking for. It had skill, tactics, warfare. And he told the inventor, you will have anything your heart desires. The inventor said, I have one very humble request. What I would like is 1 grain of rice placed on the first square of the chessboard. And the second 2, and then 4, and then 16, growing exponentially. And the emperor looked at the grain of rice and looked at the chessboard and looked at the grain of rice and said, granted. This seems like an incredibly humble request. But very quickly, the emperor realized he'd been duped. Because before he'd gotten anywhere near into going through the chessboard, this is how many grains of rice he would have had to give the inventor. So the story goes that the emperor was furious when he'd realized he'd been duped. In fact, he cut the inventor's head off, put it on a stick in front of the castle, and nobody ever showed up with a game ever again. But this is an important lesson to learn, right? Because the same way the emperor underestimated exponential growth, that's what we've done. See, when technology didn't happen and we didn't have robots and we didn't have flying jetpacks, we thought it'll never happen. But it has been growing. It started off as small as that grain of rice. The reality is this. We're on the verge of a fundamental change of what it's going to mean to be human. We're actually entering the second half of the chessboard. We're at the beginning of what experts are calling the second machine age. I mean, you've probably heard it called the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0. The reality is nobody really knows what it is, so they're just trying to give it names. The first machine age was refined by the steam engine. It was actually refined by James Watt in the 1700s, and it changed what it meant to be a human. We went from having to work 7 days a week to 5 days a week. Prosperity spread across the globe. There was a technological revolution. But the second machine age is here, and it's here now, powered by robotics, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things, and we're at the very beginning of it. So what is Industry 4.0? I'm sure you guys have heard this term a ton. In its simplest form, we have demanded so much from our smartphones that the prices of sensors have dropped to next to nothing. And pretty much every one of us is carrying a supercomputer in our pocket, so this is now the gateway to the cloud. So we can enable every single device to begin gathering data, but importantly, making sense of that data. The next is robotics and the Internet of Things. I'm going to talk a little bit about IoT. You guys have probably been hearing a lot about this. Simply, interconnected devices paired with robots. Robots are getting smarter, a lot faster. I'm going to show you guys how easy it is to program this robot that I have up on stage with me. Artificial intelligence has also been in the news, and I'm going to touch on that. I cannot overstate the importance of this technology. Recently, one of the founders of Google said that he believes this is going to be the best of times and the worst of times. It's fundamentally going to change what it means to be a human being. So let's start with the Internet of Things. Who here knows the term the Internet of Things? All right, so some of you, great. For those of you that don't, I'm going to walk you through a very quick scenario. You set your alarm to go off and wake you up in the morning. Alarm goes off, let your coffee maker know you're about ready to get up. So it starts brewing your coffee. You go downstairs, you brush your teeth. Your toothbrush lets your coffee maker know that you're about done, so it adds cream and sugar. You take your mug out of the coffee cup, out of the coffee maker, let your car know you're ready to leave. Car turns on, opens the garage door, pulls up front. You get in, it drives you to work. That's the Internet of Things. I mean, this technology is here right now. It's not far off in the future. And really it is because we've demanded so much from our cell phones. Right? The prices of sensors are dropping to the point where you can have one on your chair, so your chair will know whether you're there or not. Internet of Things. It's going to create a lot of incredible challenges, but it's also going to fuel a lot of incredible changes. Next are drones. I'm not going to get too deep into the military side of this right now, but the reason I like to use drones as an example is because they're a great example of how even experts can get the exponential growth of technology wrong. In 2010, the FAA predicted that by 2020, we'd have 15,000 drones in the skies of the United States. Right? We sell more than 15,000 drones a month. Right? But how did this happen? Right? Because these people aren't idiots. They're experts in aviation, but there's no possible way they could be experts in 3D printing. Right? They could have never contemplated that you'd be able to 3D print your own drone. But even if you could, the argument would have gone, but the algorithms are so sophisticated that you would need a PhD. Has anyone here tried to fix anything by Googling or looking something up on YouTube? Right? So we're not hitting the point of exponential growth. We're hitting the point of combinatorial exponential growth. Exponential technologies merging to create new platforms that increase growth at a rate that people that are experts in their field for 20 years, these are not dumb people, have no clue how another vertical or platform is going to speed up the platform they've devoted their whole lives to. Combinatorial exponential growth will fuel technological advancements in ways that we cannot possibly imagine. Next is autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles have also been in the news a lot lately. I'm not going to go too deep, but one of the reasons I put Elon Musk up there is Elon Musk is one of my favorite dudes. And I'll tell you why. He's a perfect example of what we like to call a Trojan horse disruptor. Right? When he announced Tesla, the response from the automobile industry was, that's cute. We tried electric vehicles. Yeah, it doesn't really work, and it's not sustainable. But they didn't really understand what he was doing. Right? All Elon Musk is doing with everything he does is he's creating a platform. And I'll talk more about platforms later. And I remember in 2016, on Twitter, he said the same way that you would update your iPhone, we're going to update our Model S's so they can drive themselves. And I actually had friends that had Teslas at the time. Everybody thought he was nuts. And then in November of that year, the same way you would update your iPhone, he updated the Model S's and they could drive themselves. Now my friends said they gave it a shot and it was terrifying. It was like being driven to work by your grandma with her eyes closed. I mean, literally. It was shaky and it was weird and it was slow. But within 2 weeks, it was actually doing a pretty good job, as good as they would do. But the important thing is, it wasn't like the car was just learning the route. It was learning from every other Tesla. They were all learning as one brain. And that's why it's important to understand none of these technologies are separate. They're all intertwined. And that's where the tipping point's going to happen. And hopefully, when you guys get to come program my robot Shipley, you'll start to really understand this. All right, artificial intelligence. We have, Elmer is over here somewhere. If you want to know about IBM's Watson, talk to that gentleman. But I'm going to briefly talk about this. You guys remember this? This is when IBM's Watson challenged and soundly beat two of the reigning champions of Jeopardy. Now, at the time, nobody really knew who Watson was. You know, people thought it was kind of a gimmick. It was set up to win game shows. in actuality, it was supposed to be a doctor. In fact, a whole network of doctors that, using artificial intelligence, were empowering the doctors we have right now to begin curing cancer. And you guys have probably seen the commercials where now IBM's Watson is doing our taxes. I mean, all sorts of different stuff. But this created something of an arms race. So now it wasn't just IBM, but it was, Google, which is now Alphabet, Facebook, Microsoft. Everybody now is getting into artificial intelligence. Now, if you remember when I talked about the game of chess, I believe it was in 1997, Garry Kasparov was beaten by IBM's Deep Blue. And this was seen as a huge jump forward in artificial intelligence. And the reality, it was more of a jump forward in supercomputing, right? Because the game of chess has a finite number of moves. So as soon as you make that first move, there's only so many other moves you can make after it. And so if you have a computer that's powerful enough, you can brute force your way through. Anyone here ever played the game Go? Maybe a few of you. OK. So the game of Go is very different. It's an ancient Chinese game, and it's played with black and white stones. And if you were to take the number of all of the atoms in the universe and add a trillion, trillion, trillion to that number, you would still not have the potential outcomes of a game of Go. So it was thought by both artificial intelligence experts and world-class Go players that this would be something that AI would never be able to do, or at least it would be decades and decades away. Well, 2 years ago, DeepMind was able to beat the world champion at the game of Go. Now, the interesting thing about AlphaGo was it was not programmed to play the game of Go. In fact, it was just programmed to learn. So what it did was it watched thousands of games on YouTube of humans playing Go, and then it played tens of thousands of games against itself. And it went on to beat one of the world champions. And then it went dark. And then all of a sudden, in online forums, a player popped up called the Master. And it went on to beat 60 of the world champions. And then it went on to beat the world's best Go player. Now, this in itself is a pretty incredible achievement. But DeepMind wasn't done. Because just about 6 months ago, they created a new version of Go, AlphaGo Zero. And AlphaGo Zero is an incredible achievement in artificial intelligence. You see, unlike the first versions that were programmed and then taught, this version had no human interaction whatsoever. In fact, it was almost like AlphaGo and AlphaGo Master had a child, because they were the programs that taught the new program. And this is what it looked like. So in the first 21 days, it began to learn. And it learned very, very fast. And it got very, very good. And went on to beat AlphaGo. But then it didn't stop. So again, this was only after 3 days. After 21, it got better than AlphaGo Master. And then it continued to get better and better and better. Now, DeepMind retired AlphaGo Zero. It's not going to play any more games of Go. Now it's going to be turned to the health field. So it's working with the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. We have now hit the point where computer programs are programming themselves better than their original human programmers. Collaborative robots, and that's what my company does. So we have two very specific sides of our business. One is we'll put in fleets of these guys. I mean, we have bigger ones. These are unlike other robots. They're easy to program, safe to be around. In fact, we're teaching middle school children how to program these robots right now. And then the other side of our business, we realize that a lot of companies either can't afford to buy the technology, or maybe they're just contract-based. So we do robot as a service. So you can hire our robots the same way that you would hire a temporary workforce. Now, I'm going to need a volunteer. Who wants to come up and program this robot and show how easy it is? Anybody? All right, so I can't see you, so somebody just walk straight up, and I'm completely fine. I'll stick around at the end, and I'll actually be out there in the middle of the day, so come up, talk to me, program the robot. How you doing? I'm John McElligott.
Douglas.
Pleasure to meet you, Douglas. All right, round of applause. All right, so this is what we are going to do. Unlike the previous generation of robots that you used to have to program, the way you program this robot is you just move his arm. As you move his arm, you're going to write tens of thousands of lines of code.
Oh, really? Okay.
So the first thing we're going to do is here. I'm going to switch places with you, and I'm going to put a little pressure on the robot. Yeah. So when I push this black button,
the arm?
right here, so you can't break him.
Okay.
The only thing I would ask is, if you wouldn't want somebody bending your arm in that way, don't bend his arm in that way.
Okay.
Everybody grabs it and they're like, oh, this is the way I'm going to pick it up. It's like, don't do that.
Okay.
All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to set a waypoint. So I'm going to press the black button on the back,
Yes.
and you'll be able to free drive the arm. So you can grab it wherever you want.
Okay.
And you're going to put it over the top of where the bottle is.
Okay.
See the bottle? You can grab it with both arms.
Oh.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Right? That's fine. That's fine as your first waypoint. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to hit set waypoint. I'm going to add a waypoint after. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to reach him straight across, stretch him right over the bottle. There you go. Back a little. There you go. That's good. We're going to set that waypoint. Hit OK. I'm going to add the next thing. We're going to close the gripper, so you're good right now. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, activate the gripper, hit edit action, close. There you go. Save action.
Okay.
The next thing we're going to do, go ahead, and you can lift him up. Oh, give me 1 second. No, you're fine.
Okay. Oh.
There you go. Right
Easy.
there.
Quite easy.
I'm going to set this waypoint. Hit OK. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to bring it over to the top of where the tape is.
To the top.
Oh, over the top of the tape. See the hole?
The tape.
Yep, you can grab it with both hands. You're
Oh,
good.
okay.
Yep, it gets a little bit. There you go, and stretch him out. There you go. You can grab the wrist, which is the top. There you go. Right there. That's good. Oh, lift him up a little bit. Here, you can stretch him all the way up if you want. You're good.
Right.
How about lift him up, lift it out of it? There you go. Right there's good. Lift it up. Right there. Okay? I'm going to save this waypoint. Let's do this. I'm going to remove this.
Somebody must take a picture of me.
You're good. Set this waypoint. All right. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Oh, that's all right. We're good. Here, let's put him in.
Wait,
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to save this action. The next thing I want you to do, lift him straight up. You can stretch him all the way up. There you go. All right. I'm going to set this waypoint. Let's see how you did. I may have to move it a little bit at the end, but we're completely fine. So let's put that back on the X. All right. Let's see how you did. There we go. Awesome. All right. Let's see. It might be a little funky at the end, but I think we'll be all right.
He's going to repeat the motion.
He is, yep. So you just programmed that robot.
Oh.
This used to take hours and hours, and you used to need a degree. We just did it in about 60 seconds. So let's see how you did.
Okay. Oh my God.
Oh, that's okay.
sorry.
That's all right. We're good. Let's see if he'll do it. Over the X. All right, so we'll do it again.
Yes. Oh my
Let's see if he'll close. Oh, all right, I see what's happening. All right, so I'm going to stop him. I'm going to go back in. So
God. Correct that.
the gripper close is where it's happening. So I'm going to let it play,
Yes.
and we can tell where it's stopping. So we'll let him open. He's going to go back.
And start the action again.
Yep, I'm going to watch where he goes. So you're good right there. Right, okay, I see. So the gripper close,
Yes. It's
it's doing,
too slow.
yep. So what we're going to do is I'm going to remove this.
Okay.
We should be able to get rid of this. And I'm going to add another point here. Command, edit action, close, save action.
Okay.
All right, so let's try it again from the beginning and see what happens.
Okay.
All right, let's give him 1 second.
Okay.
Start it with open. See what happens.
So he remembers that.
He will, yeah. So it's easy to program and it's easy to change. Let's see if he'll do it. Nope, for some reason, he does not want to move on that first one. Oh, I know what we can do.
What a-
All right, this is what we're going to do. Let's give it a second.
Okay.
So I'm going to run it from the beginning. So what you guys aren't seeing is it's running through the program, so we can actually identify where it's missing the spot.
Corrective action.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so it's right there.
Then stop it. And
Yep,
grip.
so it's on waypoint 2. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to waypoint 2. I'm going to add the gripper
The grip.
right here.
Yes.
Hit that. Hit the edit action. hit the close. There you go. Save action. Let's bring it back to the beginning. So if you can hold the bottle for me,
Wow.
I'm going to go ahead and open them up.
Okay.
There you go. Put it back on the X. And it should work this time.
Yes.
There you go. Just moving him around. Let's see if he gets in the hole. Good job. Thank you.
so much. Good.
Appreciate it. But that's how easy it is, right? What you just saw used to take engineers hours and hours and hours of programming. But literally, we did it in a matter of minutes. Now, this robot is just a teach robot, but some of our other robots have artificial intelligence, computer vision. The speed at which these robots are increasing capabilities is astounding. I'll let you guys have an example. So one of our robots, we were teaching image recognition. And I walked in the next day, and the old bank building that we're refurbishing used to be a baseball academy. And it always had a hard time with baseball bats. I would think it's umbrellas, all sorts of different stuff. And I had picked up the bat, and I just started swinging. And I was swinging for fun. And apparently, once I put it in context, it knew what it was. So we had never trained it on baseball players, but somehow it found images online. And that's how it learned what a baseball bat was. I mean, and that's happening all the time. Oh, and Douglas, thank you very much. You're in good company, because about 6 months ago, we taught the Vice President of the United States how to do this. And it began to open people's minds. I mean, I'm not going to lie, he was a little freaked out. I think he was more scared of, what is this going to look like if I touch a robot? But it was a neat experience, and the Secretary of Education was there as well. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about are social robots, right? So this is kind of a converging of all these technologies, and this is a pretty practical way for us to understand how this tech is going to impact our lives. We're going to watch a video. This is Jibo. Jibo is the world's first social robot. But before we watch this video, I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation. Who here has a smartphone? All right, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take your smartphone, and I want you to hold it up and repeat after me. I'm going to wait till everybody's there. All right, you ready? All right. This phone is not a phone. Now I want you to take your phone and turn it on its side. This phone is a platform. All right, you can put it down, otherwise we're going to do this all day. It gets awkward. This phone is a platform that disruptive and exponential businesses have been built upon over the last decade that are rocking our industries to their core. There is zero chance that 10 years ago, the first time the taxi driver had this device to their ear, they could have ever thought it would put them out of work. And yet here we are. So when I talk about artificial intelligence, and I talk about robotics, and we get ready to watch this video, don't think robots. Don't think AI. Don't think Internet of Things. Think platform. Because that's all this new technology is. It is a platform that new and disruptive businesses will be built upon, or that will destroy existing businesses. So keep this in your mind when we watch this video. Because the reality is, robots, artificial intelligence, Jibo, it's the iPhone. And if we're not careful, every single one of us in this room will be the taxi driver. So keep that in your head. We're going to watch this video, and then we're going to come back and talk a little more.
This is your house. This is your car. This is your toothbrush. These are your things. But these are the things that matter. And somewhere in between is this guy. Introducing Jibo, the world's first family robot. Say hi, Jibo.
Hi, Jibo.
Jibo helps everyone out throughout their day. He's the world's best cameraman. By intelligently tracking the action around him, he can independently take video and photos, so that you can put down your camera and be a part of the scene.
Jibo, take the picture.
He's a hands-free helper. You can talk to him, and he'll talk to you back, so you don't have to skip a beat.
Excuse me, Anne?
Yes, Jibo.
Melissa just sent a reminder that she's picking you up in half an hour to go grocery shopping.
Thanks, Jibo.
He's an entertainer and educator. Through interactive applications, Jibo can teach.
Let me in, or else I'll... And I'll... And I'll blow your house in.
Hey, where'd you go? There you are.
He's the closest thing to a real-life teleportation device. He can turn and look at whoever you want with a simple tap of your finger.
Check out my turkey dinner, Mom.
I wish you wouldn't eat that.
Hey, they make turkey pizza? I want turkey pizza.
And he's a platform, so his skills keep expanding. He'll be able to connect to your home.
Welcome home, Eric.
Hey, buddy. Can you order some takeout for me?
Sure thing. Chinese, as usual?
You know me so well.
And even be a great wingman.
You have a voice message from Ashley. Want to hear it?
Absolutely.
Hey, call me when you're home.
Better make that takeout for two, Jibo.
We've dreamt of it for years, and now he's finally here. And he's not just an aluminum shell, nor is he just a 3-axis motor system. He's not even just a connected device. He's one of the family.
Good night, Jibo.
Jibo, this little bot of mine.
So whenever I show this video, I always get one of two responses. People either think it's really, really awesome or really, really creepy. Right? Those are the only two. But it's really, really happening. We have one of these guys in our office. We got on the early list, and they started shipping Jibos 3 months ago. You can actually get one, and they're the price of a first-generation iPad. Right? And they're kind of goofy right now. But every update, Jibo gets smarter and better and faster. Remember when I talked about the Teslas? Because they're all learning as one brain. Now, I get super pumped. Like, I didn't talk about quantum computers, CRISPR, I didn't talk about any of the other crazy stuff that's happening. But there is a flip side to all of this. There's a very famous report right now that was put up by Gartner that says within 10 years, 1/3 of our population will be unemployable. Not unemployed, unemployable. The advancements in robotics, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, quantum computers are moving at a rate that our businesses, our communities, and our educational system cannot keep up. Now at this point, I know what you're thinking, right? There's no possible way things are going to change that fast. Technology in the past has not taken jobs. We'll figure out a way. It'll be completely fine. And that's like, I like to come back to this. Remember when I was talking about Napster and how me and all my friends just downloaded as much music as we could, and Lars Ulrich went on TV and he said Napster is the devil? The reality is, he was right? And we were wrong. But none of us wanted to destroy the music industry. We just wanted to listen to music. That's it. Right? So I get brought in a lot to talk to either business leaders or economic development groups, and inevitably people say, how do I engage millennials? How do I get millennials to come work for my company? How do I get millennials to want to live in our city? What's it like being a millennial? Right? So I get to talk about this because I was there at the very, very beginning. If you want to know what it's like being a millennial, it's like being given the keys to a nuclear reactor with no instruction manual, and everyone's just pressing buttons. Right? This is the first generation of mass early adopters, with no generation before to teach them to use the technology responsibly. It's the same generation that wants farm to table, right? Wants organic, wants everyone to have a living wage. Same generation that will download an app on their iPhone that might put 1 million people out of work without thinking about it. Right? That's why things have been speeding up and they're never going to slow down again. Mass adoption of technology without the understanding of how it will be disruptive is what's made technology advance at the pace it is. How many people have programmed a collaborative robot before? Anybody seen the Jibo video? Okay, show of hands. How many of you have seen this? Right, because if you think technology has been moving fast in the hands of millennials, wait till you see our kids. Another show of hands. How many people here have kids? All right, how many people was a kid? All right, great, so I've got everybody. So I'm going to walk you through a very quick scenario. Your child comes up and says, why is the sky blue? Where do stars come from? Why am I here? Right? And as a parent, eventually you say, you know what, just because. Or ask your mother, ask your father. Now let's flip that on its head. Siri, where do stars come from? Alexa, why is the sky blue? Jibo, why am I here? And that artificial intelligence will be there for your child every time. Every time. And the truth is, as they're growing up, the AI is growing up. And they will wield this technology in a way that we are completely unprepared for. But that's why I'm excited to be talking to you, right? Because this is an important conversation to be having, right? And not just thinking about, but to be coming up with a plan. And the last time the world changed this much, this fast, it was actually my town of York, Pennsylvania, that stepped up to lead the charge. So we're going to get back in that time machine to the spring of 1940. At the time, the United States was not in World War II yet. In fact, most of the nation wanted nothing to do with it. It was reeling from the Depression, burnt out from World War I. But the leaders in New York realized that whether they wanted the war or not, it was coming. So they needed to get ready. So 4 families were nominated from within the manufacturing community. And they were given 6 months and 3 guiding principles to come up with a plan. The first, that we should enter our duties with a firm conviction of necessity for this national defense program. It didn't matter that other communities didn't want to get involved. It didn't matter what everyone else was doing. They knew that whether they wanted it or not, the war was coming, and they needed to be ready. The next, that we should be wholeheartedly and without any reservation back the president in his endeavor to prepare America and forgetting for the time being all political affiliations. Right, back then, they were just as divided as they are right now. And I actually talked to people that were in the original York plan, and they said one of the things that came out of it was we can hate each other later. It wasn't that we were supposed to pretend to get along. We knew that we weren't on the same page. We knew that we didn't agree on everything, but we also knew that this thing that was coming was way bigger than any one of us. And we can argue about stuff later, but right now, we need to work together. And the next, that we with grace seek and consider suggestions and ideas from all branches of our people and from every source, and that we'd interest ourselves in everything that pertained to defense or that seemingly barred progress. See, the richest people sat down with the poorest people. The owners of the factories sat down with the workers, all the way down to kids, because the leaders knew that a plan that didn't include everyone and have everyone's buy-in would be an incomplete plan. So after 7 months and using these 3 guiding principles, they announced what would later be called the York Plan. And if you look at it, it's a 15-point outline that's practical outcome is everything the tech world's been doing for the last 10 years. It was crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, accelerated education. People built makerspaces. There weren't enough tools, so a sharing economy popped up. Manufacturing became Uberized. One person would use their equipment from 8 to 11, and they'd let a competitor use it from 11 to 8. Almost immediately, the plan was adopted after the war. So when the war started, the president didn't know what to do, sent out a request for proposals, and the York Plan won by default because it was the only one already in motion. And the way it spread was through Rotary clubs. Under the slogan, do what you can with what you have, and it became a national model. A community of communities, all moving in the same direction. But after the war, we forgot. Everybody siloed and stopped talking to each other. So that's why I'm excited to be talking to you right now. ASQ is a historic organization. And the same way the plan spread through Rotary clubs, you have an opportunity to take this plan back to your homes. Because if there was ever a time our nation needed to be united again, and we needed to work together to face an overwhelming challenge, it's now. So I know I threw a ton of stuff at you, but the reality is, even in York, we don't remember this. Right? This is the only mention of the York Plan, and it's a mural in a McDonald's parking lot. That's it. It's the only mention of when my town saved the world. So I talked about AI, I talked about robotics, I talked about Napster, I talked about the York Plan. So you're probably thinking, all right, well, what now? So in the issue of time, I'm going to plow through these pretty quickly, and feel free to come up and talk to me at the end. But if you take nothing else away from this presentation, please take this. Accept this is happening. I cannot tell you how many towns I go to, how many CEOs I meet with, how many boards I present to, and they say, wow, John, this is great. We can tell that you're really into robots. You know, you really love tech, but I'm at a level with you. You're too far off in the future. Like, we're dealing with these problems right now, and you're talking about robots and AI. I mean, this stuff is way out there, and I'm struggling with these problems. I cannot stress this enough. 95% of my presentation is not the future, it's the past. And when I sit down with leaders and they can look me right in the eye and tell me, not only do they not believe this is happening, they don't believe it's going to happen for a long time, I get terrified. Like, I'm terrified when I hear people that control the direction of our companies, our jobs, education, and our children's future will not see what's right in front of them. So if you take nothing else away, accept this is happening. The next, accept disruptive technology as inevitable. If someone is working on it, I don't care how crazy it sounds, they'll figure it out. And if they don't figure it out, the reasons it sounds crazy and impossible can be a number of things. But someone else is probably trying to fix that. So they'll fix that, which will make the thing that seems impossible not only possible, but inevitable. So when you hear crazy stuff, just expect that somebody is going to figure it out, regardless of how crazy it sounds. The next, be proactive versus reactive, which is what this conversation's about. Much of what we try and do is plan for 5 or 10 years out, right? Don't. Play for 6 months, right? Because if you're going to wait until you know everything, you're going to be left behind. Same way those leaders back in World War II ignored what everyone else was saying and began to get prepared for something that they did not know the outcome. That's what we need to do right now. We need to start building a bridge. I like to talk about it this way. Imagine you're on one side of the Grand Canyon, and you're trying to see what's on the other. The reality is it's tiny. It's far away. It's very hard to see. And a lot of people say, well, until I know what's on the other side, I'm not going to start building a bridge. But the truth is, as you build that bridge, you get closer and closer to the other side. And the other side starts to come into focus. That's what we need to start doing. We need to be okay with the fact that we don't know what we're building for. But I can tell you this for sure. When everyone else is on the other side, you are not going to jump the Grand Canyon. Be proactive versus reactive. The next is create a baseline of community understanding. And this is important, especially with a group like this. Right? Very often I speak at conferences, and leaders come, and they get really excited, and they talk amongst each other, and they don't go back and they don't tell their employees. Right? You need buy-in from the top down and the bottom up. Because the first time people see these robots should not be when they're terrified they're going to take their jobs. You need people to be rallying around this technology, not scared of it. And the only way to do that is to create a baseline of community understanding. When I say community, I just don't mean your companies. I mean your actual communities that you live in. The next, communicate, collaborate, form coalitions. Again, right out of the York plan. First thing, communicate the necessity of this plan and the action that you need to take because the technology is coming. The next is collaborate. There are people that are competitors. I'm not going to lie, but you're not competing against each other. You're competing against the tech. Right? The technology is moving, and it doesn't care who you are, and it doesn't care how long your company's been around. Right? It's going to accelerate regardless. We need to start working together in collaboration. And the last is form coalitions. It's going to be beyond geographic regions. It's going to have to be beyond industries, beyond silos, and beyond verticals. We're going to have to work together to solve problems that we've never tried to solve before. And the same way that your competitors might come from 4 or 5 industries away, we need to work together. And out of this, we will create whole new platforms and opportunities for everyone. The next is train for jobs that are not here yet. This is a personal frustration for me because we actually have a licensed college. We were the first of our kind. We had to go through the Department of Education and the process. And I'll tell you what, as an entrepreneur, it was probably the most frustrating experience I've ever had in my entire life. I mean, when we first presented the plans we wanted to implement, the response was, well, you need to show us 5 years of job postings for these. Like, we need to know that employers have been demanding these. And I was like, but the employers don't know that this is coming. And so basically what we had to do was we had to Trojan horse our way in and become a licensed school. We wrapped it around something that we thought they would understand. But the kicker was it took us a full year to get our license. By the time we got our license, guess what was the highest demanding job? The first curriculum we tried to put through. So in the space of 1 year, we went from them not knowing what it is to it being the highest in-demand job in the United States. Train for jobs that are not here yet, because if you're going to wait, you're going to get left behind. The next, things will happen faster than you expect. I'm going to move a little fast through these. The same way that those experts thought that AlphaGo or the game of Go was going to take decades, and it happened in a matter of years, that's how fast this pace is going to happen. And it's not just going to be one tech, it's going to be multiple techs. For example, robots. They're limited right now because they need a power source. It only takes one company to crack battery technology. Didn't talk about quantum computing. Add quantum computing to artificial intelligence, and you're going to start seeing some really, really crazy stuff. Things are going to happen faster than you expect, so be ready to move. Stop obsessing over millennials. This is like a really big one. It's a pet peeve of mine, right? Everybody thinks millennials will solve everything. They will not. Millennials do not know what they're doing, any more than any of us do. And here's another thing, and this is going to make some of you upset. Your kid is not a genius. Like, I'm not trying to upset anybody, but your kid is not a genius because they can use an iPhone, right? I don't know how many times I talk to people, and they're like, oh, my grandkid is Einstein. And I'm like, your grandkid is not Einstein because they could fix your phone, right? The way I like to talk about it is, if you go to another country and you don't speak the language, right, you're not an idiot because you can't ask to go to the bathroom, right? They just grew up in that country. But that has nothing to do with their intelligence. It's exactly the same thing with this. Our kids are using this technology. You know what they are? They're great consumers. They're awesome consumers. But you know what that also means? They're easily manipulated. Right? They are not geniuses because they can use this technology. Do not be lulled into a false sense of security that the younger generation has it figured out, or they will be fine because they can consume technology. And I'm almost done. This is going to be a little bit of a sensitive subject, especially in light of what's happening right now, but I'm going to say it anyways because it's going to drive the point home. Don't waste energy on solving obsolete or near obsolete challenges. How many people here have been following what's happening with, Parkland and the school shootings? You pretty much see it everywhere, right? Now, inevitably, the right and the left respond in the same way they've been responding for decades. And again, this is not a political statement. This is just an effort to create a baseline so we all understand the world we're actually living in. On the left, you've got people trying to ban assault weapons, close the gun show loophole. I mean, things that we've all heard. And on the right, you hear predictably the same stuff. The only thing that's going to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Again, this is not a political statement. But the reality is, if I wanted to commit a school shooting, I could do it from the beach in the Bahamas from my iPhone. Don't believe me? This was a drone created by a Connecticut University student 2 years ago. This was built with off-the-shelf parts and 3D printed pieces. This was from about 6 months ago.
We have a drone that is flying in over the seats right now, and it's making its way behind the Diamondback dugout at third base.
Pretty sure the Russians have something to do with this.
Yeah, they need to confiscate that thing immediately. Here's our exclusive footage of the crash landing right into that guy. That's why that's stupid.
Yeah.
Some Rhodes scholar decided he's going to fly his drone around the ballpark. There you go.
See him dancing around. Now this is Fallujah about 6 months ago. This is what Iraqi security forces found. Look familiar? What about now? It's the DJ Phantom. It's the #1 selling drone in the United States. Right, the world isn't changing, it's already changed. And the discussions we're having are from the past. They are not about the future. Because disruption isn't just coming, it's here. And it's been building very, very quickly. And while we've been arguing about the things that have been emotionally attached to us, politically motivated, things that maybe we've cared about for a very, very long time, the technology has changed in a way that will fundamentally change what it means to be a human being. So I've kind of thrown you guys into the innovator's dilemma. Right? There used to be a cycle of where you could wait to make decisions. I mean, the innovator's dilemma in its simplest form is you thought you knew the direction you were going. Maybe you had a strategic plan for your company. Maybe you thought you knew what the next 5 to 10 years were like. And then some jerk like me comes along and says a bunch of stuff like this. You try and figure out, what do I do now? Do I take this new information and try and cram it into the old plan? Like, do you take a circle and put it in a square? Do you throw out your old plan? What do you do? And again, you used to be in this cycle. You could be in this cycle for a while. Let somebody else figure it out. Every one of us in this room is behind. I don't care how much you think you're prepared. We are running a race, and we are losing. But that's why I want to leave you with this. Because the last time the world changed this much, this fast, it really was business leaders that stepped up. It wasn't Washington, D.C. It wasn't San Francisco. It was folks like you from places just like your hometown. Business leaders that stepped up to lead a nation. So I'm going to leave you with this challenge. Because you can look at this, and you can see it as history, or you can look at this, the York Plan, and see it as legacy. Because the difference between history and legacy is clear. History is something you look back upon. The legacy is something you live up to. So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you. Our nation and the world needs you. Our political system is not going to solve this problem. It's going to be up to the business leaders to step up the same way they stepped up those 75 years ago. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you having me here. And I will be outside with my robot throughout the day. Appreciate it.